Dude, what was it we did when we sat down? I know it was excruciating, but she said it was good for me, so. Yeah, because often when you get on your mat, do you ever feel like, I don't quite know where to start? Yeah? I don't quite know where to start. Yeah. All right. So I'm trying to give you little tips on where to start, where to go. So start sitting, pinching the inner hips. If you have your feet a little wider, even if you need to turn the feet slightly out so the inner hip area doesn't get pinched, then see if that feels better to you. Then we hold behind the thighs. Shift from side to side. Feel your sitting bones. There's a lot of things that attach to the sitting bones. Therein lies the problem. There's a lot of things that attach to the front hip points. Also can be a challenge. So now, balance between the two sitting bones. Where your hands are, begin to pull the hands into the back of the thighs and simultaneously press the back of the thighs into the hands. Can you feel how that pops those tendons up of the hamstrings that are beneath your hands? Okay, that's what we're trying to do, because if you might want to close your eyes to feel this, is that when you activate the lower hamstrings like that, by pulling with the hands and pressing with the back of the thighs into the hands, can you feel a softness that is allowing movement right in the sitting bone area? Yeah. So the upper hamstring allows that tipping. The upper hamstrings soften, and that means the sitting bones can shift back. So you come a little forward on the sitting bones. Can you feel it? You're rocking to the front edges of your sitting bones. Now, what's interesting here, and you can probably pay attention and keep breathing, is to notice that when you do that, the sacrum is really moving. It's changing directions. If you just sat here and didn't think about any of this and didn't create any actions like this, your sacrum would sort of sag back, right? Well, we're changing the direction that the sacrum is moving with these actions, aren't we? So just be clear about that. What is my intention here? I'm trying to find a little bit of curvature in my lumbar spine. I'm creating that movement called nutation for the sacrum. That lets my rib cage be much more open to the breath. It allows my collarbones to widen. It allows my shoulders to move in that new and improved way as we draw the shoulder blades down the two sides of the spine. Now, after the next inhale, as you're exhaling, relax that isometric action with your hands and just let the pelvis tip back. And another way to say that is just roll over the tip of the sitting bones and onto the back of the sitting bones. Now pause right there, don't go any further. Has your deep abdominal wall right above your pubic bone already suctioned back? Yeah. Can you then, if it hasn't, deliberately suction it back? Can you find those lower fibers? And it's kind of like, I talk about the deep invisible zipper. It's like intentionally you go right back behind the pubic bone, and once you kind of dive back, like deep roots reaching back for the sacrum, then you start to sort of slide or scoop up the front of the sacrum with the back of the belly. And as you tip a little further back, let's seal the container by letting the frontal hip point cinch toward the midline, and then you can draw right up from the center of the pelvic floor. Yeah? And that's going to help you roll down in a way that maybe your legs don't float. Maybe it's not so clunky. Maybe you can come down one vertebra at a time. And if you can shout instructions while you're doing that, you're a certified yoga teacher. So, quite simply, can you feel that your core is more alive?
Yes.
Yeah, so have the knees about a 90-degree angle at the back of the knees. Put your hands on your pelvic shell and find that position where the frontal hip points are in the same horizontal plane as the pubic symphysis. Now, that's the center of the pubic bone. So, for a lot of people, that means there's a forward tipping. I call it a rolling of the pelvic wheels. That lets there be a little bit of lightness. So, I want you to see if you can feel right now that where the top of the sacrum comes in contact with the floor when you just kind of let the low back sag and drop, and that's not a bad thing, but just notice whether your tipping of the pelvis forward gives you a little sense of bounciness. So we're looking for the top of the sacrum to have that little light bouncy feeling. Can everybody feel that? Does that make sense? And see if that little bounciness of the sacrum gives you kind of an alive feeling in your belly. Yeah? A lightness through the whole pelvic shell. So it's not so much now that your pelvis is a heavy, weighted, bony, whatever. It's more of a light, movable, flexible, vitally alive part of you. Now, if you can feel that, can you sense that as the pelvis moves and the sacrum has that lightness, that you start to feel movement coming up the spine? So there's kind of a rippling. A rippling movement as the pelvis tips. Notice how the pelvic floor is involved in this. Notice how as the pelvis tips a little forward, giving you that lumbar curve, that the tone of the pelvis is a little more soft, the tone of the pelvic floor. And then as you tip the pelvis a little bit back, feel the tone of the pelvic floor changing. And now as you press down through your feet and feel almost like you're trying to slide the sticky mat away from your hips, just feel what parts of the pelvis and the hips now begin to engage. As the pelvis tips forward, it's almost like you're sliding your sacrum toward the back of your head when the pelvis tips forward. Can you feel that a little bit? Mm-hmm. Can you feel how the spinal muscles right in the lumbar area engage as you do that? Mm-hmm. So give that extra little feeling as if you're trying to slide your sacrum toward the back of your head. And then as the pelvis tips back, notice the tone changing in the pelvic floor. And feel like as you press the feet down, that you're trying to slide the sticky mat away from your shoulders with your feet. And again, notice how the engagement of the muscles in the pelvic floor and the hips. Where do you feel a response in your body here? Now we're going to go just a little bit further with this. Let your fingertips wrap around your frontal hip points. Inhale the breath, let the ribs open, let the pelvis tip forward. Feel as if you're sliding the back of your sacrum toward the back of your head a little bit. On the exhale, pelvis tips back. Feel as if you're sliding the sticky mat away from you with your feet. Now right from the center of the pelvic floor, can you draw back and up toward the back of the navel? So you're activating those deepest layers of the pelvic floor. And then on an inhale, release. Just pause and notice where the breath goes. Notice the sensations as the breath ripples through the layers of the pelvic floor. Notice if you feel more connected right through the core of your body. Right from the perineum to the center of the belly, center of the solar plexus, the center of the chest, center of the throat. And then press down through the feet, shift the hips to the left a little bit. And exhale, we'll roll to the right side. On an inhale, press up to center.
Purnamidam Purnata Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamidam